Hello, and welcome to another episode of Creating the Curve. I'm Anna Bravington, your host, and today is one of my solo shows in between interviews where I like to reflect on what we talked about last time and add a little bit more insight. So, last week we had the wonderful John Tunstall on talking about sales, which is one of my favorite topics because it's so misunderstood. When people think of sales, they think of the quite extreme examples, often the car salesman, the cold calling, the things that are very obviously sales, and it scares them. If someone said that you had to make 50 calls a week to people, that would terrify most people, most business owners, myself included. I absolutely hate phoning people. I have a real funny thing about it. I know a lot of people do. I will phone people when I need to, but I much prefer face-to-face conversation or Teams or maybe writing where I can think about what I need to write and put it down. And so, what John was talking about last week was about, it doesn't have to be like that. Everyone is selling every day in their business. It's just so subtle that it doesn't feel like sales. Every time you talk to someone and tell them what you do, every time you deal with a customer, every time you're communicating, there's some selling in there, even if it's just you representing your business so that people think that they might want to buy from you in the future, that brand part of it. And what I was thinking about since John's episode, I was talking, I've actually recommended a book twice in the last couple of weeks, which is a really old book, but I absolutely love it still. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. Now, you may have heard of it. This book is famous, not just for its name, because it sounds a little bit of a tacky name. That's fine. Don't worry about the name. What's in it is really important. So, what this book is about, it's around kind of what John was talking about last week, which is about not being about you, being about the person that you're talking to, showing an interest in them, asking questions, delving deeper. It's not me, it's you type of thing. It's making sure that when you go and talk to people, if you want them to do something or to take an action, you have to let them talk, and you have to listen, and then you have to respond. And this type of approach, I was very lucky. I read this book at quite a young age. I think it was in my early 20s. And I think someone had recommended it to me. And I've used this approach in sales most of my life. And it's worked really well for me. I find that if I'm using it and I'm taking an interest in people, my win rates in sales can be incredibly high. I've worked sort of across sales, marketing, and just general business growth across my last 25 years. And in the sales roles, some of them I've got sort of 95%, 100% win rate as soon as I get in front of a person and I'm talking to them and asking them questions. What are the issues you're having right now? What are you finding difficult? What is your biggest pain point? Where do you want to be? I've found that has set me in good stead to be really successful in selling. And so I really do recommend it. You should be able to buy it on Amazon, or I'm guessing there's an audio book. But there's a whole institute around him, and his sort of techniques and sort of selling and how to work with people. It's absolutely brilliant. So I do recommend having a read of it, and also thinking about, last time we were talking about sales, but actually in your marketing as well. Are you talking, and are you asking the questions, and are you reflecting in those pain points? I know I talked about it in my grant writing solo show as well, but it's all connected. Grant writing, sales, it's all you're trying to get someone to take an action, whether it's giving you a grant, buying something from you, taking an interest. They're all similar actions. You want someone to do something, And so they need really similar approaches. So just as I sort of said on my grant writing one, same with sales, even before you're talking to someone and trying to sell something to them, is your marketing material, is your website or your social media, any conversation, even if it's one way you're having with people, is it talking about them, their pain points, and what they're struggling with? And the one thing to be really interesting to think about in sales, particularly if you're B2B consumer, this is kind of a given, is that you're thinking about the person you're selling to. Now, in B2B sales, this doesn't always happen. People sometimes, I think this is the term B2B. It's not the right term because it makes you think that you're selling to a business, but you're not. You're selling to a person in a business. And there's a few different names that I've heard sort of change B2B. It's human to human sales and marketing because they're not consumers, but it's around this changing that mindset that you're not selling to a business, you're selling to a person. So, for example, when you're selling to someone at a business, don't just go and research the business that they're working for. Oh, John, he works at a logistics company, and these are what the logistics company do, and this is the problems that they're having. That's really interesting, and you do need that. What about John that you want to contact? What is he? What is his problems? Where does he sit? Are lots of sales managers or whatever job title is, are they struggling to sell? Are they struggling to do their job? Are there lots of redundancies in the industry? Is something political or economic in the world happened that has affected their jobs in this logistics company? Yeah, if you're selling something around sustainability, there's huge sustainability movements. So how is that impacting John? So think about this person that you're targeting. What is it that's their motivators too? I was One of my favorite examples I always give is Bob, who he works in accounts. He's leading up accounts in an SME, and at the end of each month, Bob spends 4 days late nights because nothing adds up in the company. People haven't sort of given him the right information. The software's a bit clunky. And what he does for the last 4 nights of every month, which he absolutely dreads, he'll sit there trying to consolidate everything, make sure it all tallies up, lots of manual work. He's missed his favorite episode of Pointless every day. I don't actually know if Pointless is on every day, but let's assume it is. He's missed it. He's really annoyed about that. And he's had his dinner was waiting for him when he got home, and he's missed his dinner, and he's got to warm it up in front of them in the microwave in front of some old late night telly because he's and the thing is, this keeps happening each month, and he dreads the end of the month to the point he thinks he might want to go off sick, or he just is not motivated for the rest of the month because it's this thing overhanging poor Bob. So if you've got some software, some accounting software, he'll probably need to know some of the features because that's really important. But what else would he like to know? Would he like to know that actually it's going to get him personally home on time so that he can watch his telly, that he can enjoy his dinner, that he can not stress about it through the month? He's not even going to think about it. It's going to do half the work for him. And you know what? This is going to affect the business too, because his boss will be really happy because everything will be done early. His boss can review the data really quickly. He's going to have an employee that isn't stressed out and snappy at the end of the month. Bob can spend more time on strategic things and saving the company money. So that's going to really help the business as well. So it's not just about the person. There is these knock-on effects with this software. But starting at the person that you're trying to sell to is the really important side of it. And asking questions is a way to understand their pain points. So, asking Bob the accountant, what is it that you hate? What is it that you're struggling with? and he can talk to you and tell you, and then you can talk about how you might be able to solve those problems. That's when you come in. That's when you start to talk about yourselves, once you've got all the information out of him. And sort of going back a little bit to sort of what I was talking about with grant writing in a previous episode, with sales, there's a really nice section of pre-work that you can do. So you already know some of these issues that people are having. So, for example, Bob, if you deal with lots of accountants and they're already customers, one of my favorite things is customer interviews. And it's a set of questions asking people what made them have enough pain or what made them make that choice to do something about it. What was it, So the accountants had the same problem as Bob, that they were going home late, they were getting stressed. So you phone up your existing customers and you find out what was it, what was the pain point that really made them want to do something. And then what you also do is find out from that point, what did they do? Did they go online? Did they phone up people? How did they get to you? Because that's really important, because what you want to know when you're selling to people is what was that trigger? Because you can find other people with that trigger. Or if they don't know that they're in pain, you can sort of make them understand that they are in pain. So, for example, Bob might just think it's normal that every accountant, in-house or in-house finance person spends the last 4 days in stress and pain and absolutely hates it. And then what might happen is that the accountants and the finance people with your software don't do that. But he doesn't know any better. He doesn't actually know how much pain he's in because he doesn't know there's a solution. So what you can do is you can make him know that actually he is in pain if he doesn't realize it already, and that there is a better way of working. And so you can really turn it on its head. So I worked at a technology platform a few years ago, and we were a small platform that connected integrated systems together. And what people were doing, it was aimed at retailers, and retailers they had an inventory system, they had an online web shop, they had a point of sale at their till, and they were selling the same products across all of their platforms. And what was happening was that they would sell something in the shop, but obviously someone would end up buying it online because that was the last one left, and the shop system didn't talk to the e-commerce system, so no one could tell like when things had been sold, and you would oversell, missell things, because at the end of the day, the poor business owner would sit at their desk and fill out, either download a spreadsheet from one system and manually copy it over to other, or just manually copy and paste the numbers in stock and the transactions from one system to another. And imagine doing that between your inventory system, your web shop, your point of sale, and your accounting system. You might have to copy and paste it 4 times. Now, there are a couple of systems that do have integrations, but not all of them do. And so what the platform that I worked on, they had integrations across multiple retailers. And the thing is, a lot of retailers didn't actually know how much pain they're in, because there is just this assumption, oh, everyone does this, everyone's got this pain. If you've got multiple systems, you've just got to copy and paste the data and have to deal with telling customers, sorry, we already sold that in the shop when they bought it online. So there was this, don't always understand what pain they're in. What they didn't realize, because a lot of retailers aren't technical, is that you can connect systems together and they can share data and they can talk to each other. And so sometimes it's an education piece on you understanding what pain people are in, and then you telling them what pain they're in. And it's this very human approach, because once again, although that was a business problem, it was also a personal problem, because the business owner was copying and pasting manually into the middle of the night, because that's what they had to do to get ready for the next day. Imagine if that had already been done, they could go home 2 hours earlier. We are all motivated by internal drivers. I did a chapter in a book that I co-wrote called The Most Amazing Marketing Book Ever. And in there is a stat from a Harvard professor, and he talks about the fact that about 97% of our buying decision is subconscious. And the subconscious does come from internal motivators and things within ourselves, emotions. Not all of it is businesslike and logical. And there's a wonderful it's a sort of chart, diagram. It's a Kotler and Keller. It's the consumer buying process, but actually, I think it works for B2B buyers as well. There are lots of things that can affect a buying decision, and this Kotler and Keller model sort of reflects that. And it's from things such as your background, you're working class, you're rich, all of these things reflect. For example, this is a really good example. I've just recently done a marketing course, 12-week marketing course, and we looked at different brands and our perception of them. And one of them that came up was McDonald's. Now, for someone who grew up in a very working class background myself, I grew up in council estate, not much money. For me, McDonald's was considered a luxury item. It was considered really posh, particularly when I was younger, because it was 25, 30, 35 years ago. And when I was that sort of young age. And it was something special, it was something, a treat. And so my perception of McDonald's was, oh, it's a bit posh, it's nice, it's somewhere out to eat. Someone rich who perceived McDonald's, oh, it's junk food, it's not very, it's people that can't afford much have, and there's these different perceptions of things. And this is sort of what the Kotler and Keller sort of model tries to get across, that within us are lots of different ways that we've learned, how we've grown up, how our relationships, our background, religion, where we live, all of these shape who we are, and all of these influence our buying cycles. So, for example, I'm from a working class background, not much money. I get excited about most things because as a youngster, I didn't really experience many things. I sort of did education, and I worked from a very young age at university. I had 2 jobs, and we didn't go many places or do many things. So now, like, the world to me now, that from when I was earning up to now, is that I'm a bit like a kid in a sweet shop, because everything is exciting and really interesting, and I can do things and go places that I never used to be able to do. And so I look at the world very differently than someone who had a different background to me. I know someone who grew up quite wealthy, and for her, everything's boring. I just had 2 weeks in Egypt. Oh, it was a bit boring though. And for me, it would have been, oh my God, I'm going to Egypt. It's this very different background, because she's traveled multiple times a year for all of her life. And now it's all a bit dull and boring. And now she actually doesn't want to go on holiday. And so it's really interesting, these different perceptions. And this is what this sort of Kotler and Keller it sort of tries to get across. The people that you're speaking to, even your B2B, they have different perceptions of things, they have different feelings about things. And it can be something in the past, something in their makeup, but it can also be current, what the weather's like, whether it's getting towards the end of the month and they're feeling a bit skint and might be a bit miserable. It can be all of these things. So sort of building on what John was talking about, this very human approach to sales works fantastically, because we're dealing with humans, backgrounds, emotions. Consumer marketing tends to tip on this a lot more than B2B. So if you are listening to this and you're a consumer, do make sure you are thinking about those. But if you're B2B, think doubly about it, because you'll often get that perception of that you're speaking to a business, and you're speaking to this human. Reflecting back on what John said, sales has changed over time. John often says that and I think he mentioned it in his episode, that with the changes of the internet and with research and how people now buy and sell, sales is kind of, people have been overwhelmed with it, and we've had to change our approach to sales over time to make sure that we're reflecting this this sort of new overload that people have, and the making sure that we're listening to them, because that's how you cut through the noise. That's how you look different. That's how you win work. You know, I've won work in ridiculously difficult environments, and it's about making sure that I'm connecting with people. And some of our types of sales that we do, and the types of ways that we talk to people, have changed too. So I was having a discussion with a couple of people actually in the last week. I've been talking a lot about sales this last week with customers, and a few people are still very much into things like cold calling, etc. And it's trying to work out actually if that, what approach works best for you and your audience. For example, given cold calling that I was just mentioned, it's quite a low win rate these days. When you tend to get like about a 1% conversion rate, which is very low. And if you're a business owner, do you want to make 100 calls a week to just get one win, or 100 calls a month, depending on how many new customers that you want? And also, is the approach you're using, does this fit with this human approach that we're trying to take these days? So, for example, if someone calls you, so have you had, answer this question, have you had a cold call from someone, and how did it make you feel? Most of the feedback I get from people is that they didn't enjoy the cold call. It felt intrusive, that someone was trying to sell to them, and they didn't like it. And that generally is the consensus, that, and probably this is reflected in the conversion rate of 1%, because it feels almost uncomfortable. You've got someone phoning you up, done well, cold calling can work, but once again, it's this back to the dialogue. You've got to be asking the questions, not going straight in with the sale. But throughout life, most people I've spoken to have not enjoyed a sales call. And so how's that going to make the person feel? You phone them up, they've not enjoyed it. Are they going to feel positively or negatively about you? So you have to be really careful with the methods that you choose that fit with this human to human approach. Now, say, for example, instead of just like cold calling someone, you'd connected with them on LinkedIn, maybe sent them a lead magnet. If you don't know what a lead magnet is, that's something of interest that you think they might like. It's not selling. For example, for my business, Creating the Curve, same name as the podcast, I have a piece called Transitioning from Technician to Leader. Not a sales piece at all. I work with a lot of technical people, scientists, engineers, programmers who have started a business, and that's their skill set, a technical skill set. And what they find is that they've built the product or built the service, and then they have to transition to leading the business, doing the strategy, the marketing, the sales. And that's a really difficult transition, because not only are you trying to learn a new set of skills that might even be some that you're quite, don't feel quite natural to you, and how you work, but also there's this sense of loss because you love doing the programming or the building, and then you suddenly lose part of your identity because you're not doing that anymore. So, maybe someone else is doing it for you, and you're having to do this sort of leadership side. So I've got this workbook and a video, and it's all about this transition and how to transition. There's some techniques in it, a reading list. There's no selling in it. It's just a subtle, at the end, if you want more help, come and join my free community, Creating the Curve. Nothing too extreme. And by the way, if you do want the technician to leader lead magnet, let me know, because it is really useful. And it's just a nice thing to send out. So say I sent that out to someone, I'd connected with them on LinkedIn, then I called them. Well, that's different. I've found out a lot about them. We've chatted on LinkedIn. I've sent them something useful. I've warmed them up. They're like, oh, this Anna, she's really helpful. And then I call them. It's not some random stranger calling them. It could be from a call center or something, that, and it's Anna who sent me some stuff and has been really interesting and useful. So once again, thinking about this human approach, we recently had a letter writing workshop which used the Dream 100 strategy. I think it's from, I say Chet Matthews or Chet Daniels, but my colleague Michael Gordeev delivered this workshop and it was absolutely brilliant. And it was about taking a step back from digital and letter writing. So letters were created and you can use AI to help you along and create these letters. And they're posted out to people, and you can post them on their own or you can post them with a little trinket like a biscuit or something. So for example, you work with teachers, and those teachers, you know what teachers, they work really long hours, they're very tired. How about if you sent them a letter but also a little biscuit and said, if you join my service, not only will it save you stress and everything, you know, you might save you some hours in a day. And here's a biscuit to have a sit down and think about, like, how much you'd enjoy that time. This is a very human approach. You're really delving into how they feel. And Michael has done a few tests on this, and he said that they were getting about 15 to 20% conversion rate on sending these letters out. I think about that compared to things like the cold calling, which is 1%, 15 to 20%. Some of these activities, these really nice human activities, they feel like for a small business that you are low on staff. You know, it might be just you, it might be two of you, it just might be a few of you. What you need is something with a good win rate, that, because otherwise you're very short on time. So how are you going to make 100 calls a week? Or find something that has got a higher win rate, a higher conversion rate, so that you can spend less time and win more. So these letters were brilliant, and you sent out them almost like you would do an email campaign. So you sent out the first letter, and then you sent out a following one 2 or 3 weeks later, and then another one a few weeks later. And one of them can have a biscuit in, but they don't all have to. And in them, we're going back to the same thing. We're talking about the issues that those people that you're writing to have. So if it's teachers, probably overwork, underpay, difficulties in the education system. So the first couple, you talk about the problems that they're having, and and the second one you start talking about the solution, and then the third one you can move on to more salesy, saying, if you're feeling like this is what the problems you're having, come onto our service, give them a month's free trial or something, and QR code, and then they can sign up. And the one thing I love about post, it is very human. Oh God, I love getting something through the post, whether it's a letter or an envelope, particularly if it's handwritten. Love a handwritten one. Something nice. I mean, if someone sent me some biscuits or little pouch of tea or something through the post, I mean, we're best friend forever. I love getting like little trinkets and lovely things. So think about, how we can really play into those emotions of people. These lovely approaches that, these are not sales that you'll think of. It's about subtle warming to people, being helpful, finding out about them, showing interest, and then you can tell them about you. Because exactly what John was saying, don't sell to someone. This doctor analogy was absolutely brilliant. Don't sell to someone, it's like a doctor someone going, I've got a pain, and then prescribing them. A doctor wouldn't do that. They'd be asking, where is the pain? What type of pain? This is what you have to do from a sales perspective. Ask those questions, find out how you can help them, and then suggest suggest the ways that you can help them. Because what they now know is that you know about the pain, and you've related how you're going to help them with that pain that they're having, and that you're going to relieve the pain. Because you wouldn't want to go to a doctor and they say, I'm going to give this cream, and you're going to say, is it going to help the pain in my toe? And they're going to go, no, not really. I need to know it's going to help the pain in my toe. So, this approach, this human approach, and hopefully this has sort of given you a bit more of a better feeling about sales, because we're not expecting you to go cold calling 700 people in a month. That's not what we're expecting. It's about building relationships, and B2B, changing your mindset around making sure you're talking and thinking about the human side of it, not just the the building, the business side of it. And just have, think about how you would like to be sold. Think about sales experience you've had that have been your favorite. What's left good memories? And if you haven't had any good ones, think about the bad ones and what was bad about them, and don't do that. So that's what I do. I'm like, that was awful. I'm never going to do that in my entire life, because that made me feel awful when they did that. My worst one was that I had actually agreed to buy something. It was something very expensive when I was at a previous job. It was, tens of thousands of pounds. And our legal department was really stacked. And so I said, look, we're going with it. Absolutely. We've sent the stuff to legal, but you're going to have to wait. And what he did was that he then sent a letter to my boss to kind of move things along a bit. But my boss was like, why is this guy messaging me? You're dealing with this. This is really weird. And my boss had no more control over legal department than I did. And it all got a bit awkward, to the point that we nearly cancelled it and went with someone else, because it was that bad. So I'm like, right, I'm never going to do that, because that felt awful and was really strange. So think about how you would like to sell. And try that human approach, and see how you get on. So I'm going to wish you good well and happy selling. And if you do want more help, please do come and join the free Creating the Curve community. It's perfect for STEM founders like yourself. And come and join along. If you go to creatingthecurve.co.uk, there's links to join in there. And if you want to connect with me, Anna Bravington, on LinkedIn, please do. And ask me any questions. I'm always happy to help. So have a lovely day, and I shall see you in the next episode.